expert analysis on the situation in eastern Ukraine. We are now joined live by Michel Chossudovsky, director of the Center for Research and Globalization. Michel, thank you very much for being with us. Now,
good evening.
As we've just heard, activists in Kharkov are saying that policemen from other Ukrainian regions arrived in the city, and they were the ones who provoked the violence. What are they trying to achieve, in your opinion?
Well, I think, first of all, the Kiev government has lost control of its security forces, its law enforcement in eastern Ukraine. And they realized this several weeks back, because the Ukrainian interim government, self-proclaimed, announced and confirmed that they were hiring a private military company named Greystone Ltd. Actually, it's a company which was founded by British SAS in the heyday, but essentially they're bringing in private mercenaries, which are now they're most probably integrating the police forces, but they're also acting outside the realm of official law enforcement agencies. And the witnesses who said that these people came in, they could have been agents provocateurs, I suspect they were, which also integrated these US NATO-supported military company, which is acting in eastern Ukraine. And at the same time, of course, there's the role of the so-called ultra-conservative neo-Nazi operatives, given the fact that we know that the two extreme right parties, Svoboda and Right Sector, are in control of the Committee for National Security and Defense, which plays a key role. And I would suspect that the government in Kiev is also divided between the Ministry of the Interior on the one hand and the right-wing extremists on the other.
Well, you've mentioned the government in Kiev, a possible division, but they have promised a harsh response with protests swelling up in southeast of the country. What could this possibly mean? What could a harsh response look like?
Well, first of all, that government doesn't really control the shots. It is an instrument of the puppet masters, namely the United States, NATO, and to a lesser extent the European Union. They obey orders, and we've seen the position they've taken with regard to the IMF reforms. They simply stated, we will accept whatever reforms are proposed to us by the International Monetary Fund. And essentially what they have accepted is the impoverishment of the entire population from west to east, because that reform package is going to create a further process of impoverishment of a country which has already been impoverished in the course of the last 20 years. And this reform package essentially destroys the livelihood of the Ukrainian population, and people in eastern Ukraine are now protesting against this government, which is committed to the impoverishment of the masses of people. And they actually have acknowledged that this is going to impoverish the population.
Now, Moscow also stated that it has concerns about security forces arriving in the cities in eastern Ukraine. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, where administrative buildings have been occupied by pro-independence activists. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that the most troubling thing is that there are mercenaries from an American private security firm among them. You talked about this a little bit. Could you expand a little bit more?
Well, I'm going by a report which was published, I think, on the 25th of March by the Russian news agency, and it was based on statements made by the interim government to the effect that a U.S. private military company, in fact, it's not a U.S. registered private military company. It's registered somewhere in the Caribbean in an island. It's Greystone Ltd. And this particular company was hired with a view essentially to taking over law enforcement activities, as well as most probably covert operations in eastern Ukraine. It is not in the interests of the Russian government to see this process erupting in the form of a violent protest movement or a process which will ultimately destabilize eastern Ukraine. And there's no evidence that the Russian government is in any way interfering with unfolding events in eastern Ukraine. This is a spontaneous movement which has emanated from the grassroots, but it also has considerable support within within the Ukrainian population of eastern Ukraine.
All right, I appreciate your thoughts. Michel Chossudovsky, Director of the Center for Research on Globalization, thank you very much, as always, for being with us.